This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
I want to tell you about our newest sponsor, Team Top Cat Sales. Are you looking for team apparel for your high school, your club sports team, or corporation? Look no further than Top Cat Sales, located on the east side of Main Street in downtown Royal Oak, between 11 and 12 Mile. Through founder and former University of Michigan QB John Wangler's leadership, Top Cat Sales has developed a tradition of selling and distributing custom Adidas team apparel with the highest quality and best service. Get your organization, school, or club team all in with Adidas today by going to topcatteamsales.com. That's topcatteamsales.com. Also, follow Top Cat on Twitter at Team Top Cat.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for downloading another episode on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. This is the Doc and Jock Sports Program. We are at episode 135. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, my cousin, Adam the Jock Strozinski. What's up, cuz?
What's up with you, man? You got a wrestling match this evening? What's going on? I see the championship belts over there. For those who don't know, John's the eight-time WWE heavyweight champion of the world.
Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody!
I just came off an interview with Max White, and we both share a love of wrestling. So I knew that he was coming in for an interview, and I knew that he was a big wrestling fan, and we talked about it, and I was like, oh, okay, I know I'll bring it in. And we shared a funny story in that I got that belt well over 14 years ago. And I'm like, yeah, dude, it's a great belt. It's a fun prop to have it around. And I'm like, oh, I had it stored in the basement. And from, our previous life in podcasting and from my basement that I have a bunch of sports memorabilia around in the corner. So I'm like, you know what? I think I'll bust it out and maybe a guest that's into wrestling take some pictures and stuff. So I'm like, yeah, Max, it's all good. I got a wrestling belt. And, they're pretty cheap. I think you can get them now for like $100. It's been 15 years. He's like, bro, right now they're going for $450. I'm like, they went up in price? I got a discount? And he's like, yeah, bro, you can't get a wrestling belt replica for anything less than $400 nowadays. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Holy
so
cow.
That's actually a collector's item. I got it for like $150. And I got it in college. It's a neat prop. And yeah, we'll snap some pictures with you.
Dude, that is old school because I just seen who the champion was on that belt. Kevin Nash.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
So I love
Big
talking
Daddy
wrestling.
Diesel.
I love talking wrestling. And now this is WrestleMania season, as you know. And, it's a fun time, and so I brought it in. I might even snap some pictures and put it up on the wall or something. But it's a neat prop, so when we have guests in, you can share some stories and things like that. There is a little bit of a closet wrestler in everybody. Everybody's peeked in a little bit, whether you are into it now or you're just kind of faded away. But I love talking wrestling, man.
Yeah, wrestling's cool. You know what? I watch it. The thing is, though, it's messed up. I don't really watch the WWE. I watch everything else but that. I have Impact, which was TNA. I record that and watch that. I watch Paragon, I watch Ring of Honor, I watch everything but I watch everything but the good one.
So that's good, man. The weather's nice. It's a fun time to be recording podcasts. And now with the NFL free agency, it's kicked off. And really, in the sense, when the NFL season ended, I really didn't feel like there was any real offseason. I mean, there's news with the Lions with their moves. There's now the combine. There's the look at free agents and your team needs. I never really thought about it, but you really could follow the NFL 365 days a year and still have a lot to talk about. And it's amazing now what's happened just in the last few days with the Detroit Lions.
The NFL has built a 24-hour news cycle that basically surrounds their sport and only their sport. They're the only one who has done it. I think Major League Baseball has tried, the NBA has tried. I have no idea what's going on with the NHL. It's Gary Bettman's in charge over there. But the NFL, you literally can follow it 365 days a year. And when it's a leap year, add one more because you're checking in on leap day. It's amazing. And to your point, Kelvin Johnson finally has come out and made his decision, made it final, filed his paperwork with the NFL to retire. So now our Detroit Lions are headed into a season for the first time in almost 10 years without CJ.
Now, do you think that there was some gamesmanship going on? Because there's been talk about, the timing of it, that once the Lions came out and said, hey, we need to know an answer within 24 hours, then he came out and did it. Or do you think that it was kind of Calvin was in touch with the organization and he just waited till the deadline, and knowing that this time of year, around March 9th is when free agency really kicked off, that he just waited? Because it just seemed weird that the moment that the Lions put out and it got out publicly that, hey, this is the deadline, we need an answer within 24 hours, boom, it had already taken place. So I kind of feel like the relationship between the Lions and Calvin is respectful, but maybe the situation when Bob Quinn didn't call might have just maybe delayed his response and saying, you know what, I don't have to really call. I know that I think that they have gotten the hint that I'm not really coming back. I kind of sprinkled it to the team. So I'm sure Matthew Stafford let it out to the people that needed to know that it wasn't an angry situation. It was just one where, hey, I don't really need to let you know exactly what I'm doing until the time is right. And he did. I don't think there's any hard feelings. I just don't think he was, forthright and maybe just willing to call the organization when Bob Quinn didn't reach out to him.
Jesus Christ, Calvin took forever to make this damn decision. At least it seemed like it. I don't know if the relationship is strained, like you're saying, but it seemed like it took forever. And it was like the worst kept secret. Everybody knew he was going to retire.
Would you have been offended if a new guy comes in, you're a guy that's valued in the organization, that guy doesn't even call you?
You're basically the cornerstone of this franchise. He is the face of the franchise. I would probably have been a little bit teed off. I would have been like, hey, don't you want to check in on this at least? I mean, you do owe me, I think the cap hit was $24 million, but he was going to get almost $16 million next season. So, yeah, don't you want to check in on your $16 million man?
Just say, hi, nice to meet you. I'm Bob Quinn. Here's what I'm thinking. Maybe what's the idea here? Yeah, I thought it was a little bit unusual.
I did too. The only good thing is Calvin made the decision at the time when it wouldn't hurt the team. Like he drug this out forever and a day, and then he finally made the decision right before things could have got a little bit, I guess, tense, for lack of a better word. Because now he makes the decision the day before free agency kicks off. Lions are able to go out there, address some needs, and you can now start to piece your draft together a little bit better because now going into the season, Calvin's not here. You know what you need. You know how you have to address this. Also, you can address free agency because you do have, I think it was, $41 million to sit there and spend. So you can now address what you need in free agency as well as through your draft.
Now, do you care at all that the way Calvin did it was similar to Barry, not in terms of waiting last minute until training camp, but releasing a statement, not standing up there in front of the press and saying things, talking to the fans directly? Because the reason why I felt like it was an issue for me, and I probably am overreacting, but you just saw Peyton Manning retire. You just saw how he presented himself. Went up there, was self-deprecating, was humorous, was sharing a little bit of stories about his time and things like that, was willing to take questions from the media, some of them related to the allegations from Tennessee. And so you have Peyton Manning going up there, sharing his insight. Seems, he got all his teammates up there snapping photos, taking selfies. It seemed celebratory in nature. Whereas with Calvin, I know he's laid back. I know he's a guy that doesn't like the limelight. He's very ultra professional, very introspective. And that's kind of how I am too. I'm a little bit more braggadocious when you stick a microphone in my face, but if you put cameras and things like that, not so much. But I felt like he owed it to me. I felt like he owed it to me to just say, hey, thanks for supporting us. I know we fell a little bit short of our goals. I wanted to, with all my heart and passion and soul, bring a championship to Detroit. But I do believe that, hey, Bob Quinn is going to take this in a new direction. Stay with us. Stay supportive. You might not see me around as much, but I'll be still part of the organization. Thank you. Well, that was it. That was not even 60 seconds. That's all he probably needed to do. I wasn't going to expect him to go up there and, rally off a 40-minute press conference, but just stand up there as a professional, thank the fans. And so for me, that kind of just left me like, okay, congratulations on your retirement. Sail off into the sunset. That chapter's closed. I'm ready to look at the new chapter.
But you got to look at the way Calvin has always carried himself and the way he's always presented himself. He's always been a very mild-mannered guy, pretty meek, doesn't say a whole lot. And I think that's something that you and I have crucified him on as being the face of the franchise and being the leader of this team. He's never been out in front of everything, telling the organization, we need this, we have to do this, let's address this. He's always kind of been in the background. And I think the way he goes out is kind of the way he's always led this team. Very quiet, very mild-mannered, doesn't have to say a whole lot, doesn't make it about himself. In the end, he opens it up by basically saying thank you and leaves by saying sorry. So it's one of those things where Kelvin's outro was just like Kelvin's career. It basically resembled him. So I don't have a problem with the way he went out. My bigger issue is when I look back at Kelvin's career as a Detroit Lion, the way I'll probably remember him most is as an underachiever. I mean, all the potential in the world. The guy was a monster of a man. He was big as a tailback, big as a linebacker even. Sat there and could run as fast as the quickest cornerback out there and could jump out of the gym. And yet the guy has won what? He has a couple records that he won, but no playoff wins, no championships, no division titles. He's done nothing. He's done absolutely nothing. He's basically what he was, a flash of light that was really pretty to see. And then he fizzled out and you were left holding your hands. And that's just kind of how I look at his career and his time spent in Detroit. I mean, I loved watching Calvin Johnson. He was the reason to tune in on Sundays, but he never brought anything. There was never any real return for a Detroit Lions fan, and I think that's the biggest issue with Kelvin's tenure in Detroit.
Yeah, it was a situation where you had a guy that was supremely talented on the field. He did a lot for the organization. He did a lot for Matthew Stafford. Arguably, you could say he made Matthew Stafford, not the other way around. Yeah, and it just sucks that when you look at it, his supreme talent has to be talked about in terms of, unfulfilled potential because of the lack of success with the organization. And it's really disappointing. I think the fan base is handling this correctly. They're really turning their attention to the Lions and blaming them for not supporting Calvin Johnson. And the other way around, it happened for Barry Sanders, where they blamed him for leaving because it was so abrupt. But in this situation, with the story the way it unfolded, the fans blame the Lions for, hey, you had Calvin Johnson, you have Matthew Stafford. Where was the rest of it? Where was the success? You owed this guy a little bit more. So, and that's, I think, how he's going to be remembered. And I look forward to talking a little bit later in the podcast regarding our thoughts about Calvin Johnson, whether he's a Hall of Famer, whether we think the way he left was appropriate, the new addition to the Lions. But on the line next, we got Justin Rogers. He's on the beat for MLive, Detroit Lions reporter. He's ready and willing to come on the podcast, share his thoughts, and I'm looking forward to getting his opinion. I've tried to track him down several times through our producer's Twitter account. Just a simple email through my email account to say, hey, you want to come on and talk about the Lions? He messaged me back, and he might even do a one-on-one later on, probably over the phone. I'm actually looking forward to chatting with him, getting a sense of what the hell's going on with these Detroit Lions. Justin Rogers next. Stay with us.
Doc and Jock here for Fanatic U. If you're looking for some sweet sports swag and you love your Detroit teams, and I mean you really love your Detroit teams, you got to check out fanaticu.com and get the coolest gear out there and rock your Red Wings shirt, rock your Lions shirt, rock your Piston apparel. Wear it till the wheels fall off. Michigan State, you know what? They got it too. Check out Fanatic U. They have 6 locations all over Metro Detroit. Check them out, fanaticu.com.
Yeah, we coming now. Come on. Yeah. That's right. We put it down. It's like a family in here, just a little disabled. Putting it down, we lay them out on the table. Yeah. Who's in the house? The brothers in the house. Gotta turn it on out. Let you know what we about. Kinda like Cain and Abel. A bit unstable. Don't be breaking the brain. Break the whole damn table.
On the phone with us right now is a master of the figure 4 leg lock, so you don't want to mess with him. Lions beat writer Justin Rogers of MLive. Justin, how you doing, buddy?
Good. Hey, thanks for having me.
So, news breaking today. It appears that the Lions have secured Marvin Jones. What are your thoughts on the Lions going out and acquiring Marvin Jones from the Cincinnati Bengals in the opening of free agency?
I think if you're looking for the best way to replace Calvin Johnson, the biggest name on the free agent market was Jones. Obviously, not going to replace Calvin on a one-to-one scale, but there is no receiver that was going to be able to do that, and the closest one that could have, Alshon Jeffrey, was franchised by the Chicago Bears. I like the signing. You know, it's a different type of receiver. He fits kind of the mold of what the Lions already have in Golden Tate and Theo Riddick, a guy that can do a lot of damage in the short to intermediate range in the field, makes a lot of tacklers miss once he has the ball in his hand. He's a yak guy. And you see kind of how the Lions are constructing a team that's going to be based on speed and kind of picking up chunks of yardage with short passing game. It's an area where Matthew Stafford really thrived last year. I still think they could use a vertical threat. They don't really have one on the roster right now, unless you want to count Corey Fuller, who I don't. So it'll be curious to see how they fill that role. But with Ebron, Jones, Tate, Riddick, and Amir Abdullah out of the backfield as well, I think they have a nice arsenal of weapons for Stafford in the passing game.
Now, Justin, a lot of people may argue that to build a football team, you want to build from the inside out. Was this a move that the Lions necessarily had to make? A lot of people are looking at the salary range around $8 million per season for a guy that, yes, he's in his prime. Yes, he's a younger talent, and he's a guy that can be productive, but there's still a lot of question marks as to whether maybe A.J. Green made him a more productive receiver, and now coming into the Lions, can he really fill that role as a number one if he's getting paid like that?
Listen, I still think the most important area to build on a team is the trenches. But you need quality talent at every position. Jones was available. He was interested in what the Lions were offering. And, I think the price range is very reasonable. I look at Jones as a comparable talent to Golden Tate. I think they're going to be a 1 and 1A receiving tandem here in Detroit. I think the contract value, if you consider the inflation of the cap over the last 3 years, is also comparable to the contract Tate got. And people are going to really focus on that average annual salary of $8 million. And I understand that. That's how it's reported in the media. But what it really boils down to is how that contract breaks down and how the guaranteed money is set up. We don't know any of that yet, but the first-year salary cap hit for Jones almost certainly will be in that $4 million range. It's only about 10% of the cap space that the Lions have, giving them a lot of room still to work to upgrade those other spots.
Justin, do you see now the fans, the way they're going to look at this is Marvin Jones is coming in here and he's going to be the replacement for Calvin Johnson. Is that a fair, I guess, way to look at this? I don't believe Marvin Jones is going to be able to produce the numbers that Calvin produced, possibly, but I just don't see it his first season.
No, it's absolutely not fair, and I don't think fans should look at it that way. What you have to do with Calvin Johnson is you're not replacing the man, you're replacing the production. You have to find a way to replace about 800 snaps, 80 receptions, 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns, 9 touchdowns. That's what you have to replace, and that's going to be picked up by many people. Now, listen, Jones is going to be the biggest bridge to that gap. He could come in, and I think he's a guy that really could offer 70 to 75 receptions. I think he could give you 800 to 900 yards, and he's a proven scoring threat. I know he only had 5 touchdowns last year, but in his breakout campaign, he had 10. He had 4 in one game. He's actually very savvy in the red zone. So I think you can get a big part of that production from the scoring perspective from Jones, and then the rest of it's got to be picked up from the other guys.
Touching on Calvin Johnson, why do you think this decision took so long? I feel like this was the worst kept secret in all of Detroit. Everybody kind of knew he was going to retire. And then right up to the last moment when it could almost hurt this team with their preparations going forward for next season, Calvin decides to make this decision.
I think the decision that he made was he was going to retire. Caldwell said, hey, think about it. And Johnson took that to heart, and he respectfully thought about it. I think the longer that decision did go on, the more he was considering whether he wanted to come back. You have to understand that at the end of the season, NFL players are so physically and mentally beat up that it's just the worst time to be making a decision about your future is in the weeks immediately after season ends. He wanted to get healthy, see how his body felt, see how his mind felt, and then make the decision. I respect the time frame that he did it in. He gave the team very early notice that he was considering it. That allowed them to come up with multiple plans as they approached free agency. And then he actually filed the retirement papers before free agency, giving them that extra cap space and flexibility. So I don't think the team was hurt in any way. I don't even think the team would have been hurt in any way if he waited till April. That cap space still would have been useful to the team when it comes to signing the rookies, to extending Darius Slay, and then if there was any leftover cap, a couple million left over, that carries over to next year. So they're not like they're going to lose the cap space. But I think he gave the team all the proper notice, did it in the most respectful way possible. And, at the end of the day, it's probably the best situation for all parties.
Does Calvin Johnson retiring, does this make Bob Quinn's job easier or more difficult? Yes, it frees up about $11 million in cap space, but you're losing probably one of the best talents Detroit has ever had.
Yeah, but that's also a talent that is on the decline. And listen, I don't want to take away from anything Calvin Johnson's accomplished. One of the greatest, most dominant wide receivers of all time, still gave you 1,200 yards, 88 receptions last year in a quote-unquote down year. But, it was a guy on the physical decline. It was a guy that clearly wasn't mentally committed to it anymore in the fact that he was considering retirement. He didn't know if his heart was going to be into it fully next season. And, yeah, it's going to be very difficult to replace Calvin Johnson. And as I said, you're not replacing him one-to-one. It's not happening. Get over it. You're not going to find, even if you drafted a guy like Treadwell or Will Fuller, they're not going to give you the dominance, the pure dominance that Calvin Johnson did, because nobody can. But now it allows Quinn, it gives him the flexibility. It's not just $16 million in cap space this year, or not $11 million in cap space this year, $16 million salary, but it's that $24 million going forward. This decision was coming down sooner than later. It was going to come down in the next 2 seasons. So now Quinn can have all the cap flexibility he wants to craft the roster in his vision.
Speaking with Justin Rogers, MLive Detroit Lions reporter, now that Calvin Johnson has made the decision to retire, how are you going to reflect back on his career? A lot of us are debating, well, is he a Hall of Famer? What was his true impact for the Lions? He obviously was a very talented wide receiver. He provided us with a lot of great memories. But on the other spectrum, no playoff wins, only 2 appearances, and really was maybe another person that you can chalk up that the Lions had, but did not have ultimate team success. How are you going to remember him, Justin?
Well, I'm going to remember Calvin for his dominance. You know, I watched him in practice every day. I saw things that I couldn't believe constantly throughout his time here. Just the catches he would make in practice every day were, you know, often better than the ones that people saw in the games. You saw the incredible record-breaking seasons. You saw the physical dominance over pretty much every cornerback in the NFL for a 5-year stretch when he was really in his prime playing seasons. And yeah, the team success wasn't there. I don't put that on Calvin. I look at, you know, the history of teams and the way they're constructed and success, and a wide receiver can only do so much. You know, it's a position that I don't view as one of the more impactful positions on a football team. I look still at this as a managerial failure to put a good enough team around Calvin Johnson to allow him to have team success. It's disappointing that he wasn't able to achieve more from a team perspective, given the work ethic that he had, the humility he had. I mean, he was really the ideal superstar for his city. Completely high character guy, work ethic, never complained, and, you know, they wasted it all. But that's kind of been the story with the Lions for almost 6 decades now.
So looking forward, after Calvin retires, they go out, they grab Marvin Jones. The Lions have roughly, we'll estimate, somewhere in the neighborhood of about $34 million in cap space. How do you see this team allocating its remainder of cap space during this free agency period?
I think they're going to pick up a lot of little pieces. I don't see any big splashes. I think Marvin Jones might be the biggest splash they make. I'm a little surprised that they're not in on, at least currently, being reported to be in on any of the tackles that are out there, guys like Mitchell Schwartz or Russell Okung. They really need to upgrade at one of those tackle spots. It could be right tackle, it could be left tackle, and it can move Reef. You know, they just need to upgrade that spot more than any. I think the defensive tackle and defensive end needs can be filled in the draft. I really do. But, you know, they need depth at so many spots. You really could look at it coming into free agency that they needed help on every single spot on the team from a depth perspective. So I think they're going to fill that, probably end up signing, you know, somewhere in the ballpark of 6 to 10 players over the next couple of weeks to fill those roles, some starting, some backups.
On the phone with us right now is Justin Rogers of MLive. He is the Detroit Lions beat writer. He's also a master of the figure four, which we're going to discuss here in a second, Justin. But you can follow him on Twitter at Justin_Rogers. Justin, you're talking to 2 wrestling fans here. And John, for one, is a huge Ric Flair fan. His opening for one of his segments is you got to be the man, or to be the man, you got to beat the man. That's how big of a fan of Ric Flair he is. What makes you a master of the figure four leg lock?
You know, I grew up a wrestling fan. I don't know. It was something, you know, I tinkered around with when I was in junior high and high school. We'd mess around, but I got really good at actually slapping it on people when they weren't looking. And it takes me all of about 1 second to get it on you. And it's a real thing. I mean, you can put a figure four on somebody. It's pretty damn painful and tough to get out of. So it just kind of became my thing in high school. And it's a joke that's, I guess, stuck with me now through my professional days.
Excellent. My stepbrother used to try to slap it on me all the time. I would let him do it to see if I could just withstand the pain threshold of it. But you're right. It does hurt like a son of a gun. All right, Justin, we want to thank you for coming on. We appreciate your time. Hopefully we can have you back sometime around the draft to talk some Lions draft. How's that sound?
For sure, fellas.
Sounds great. Thanks, Justin. We appreciate it.
Have a good one.
That was Justin Rogers, MLive Detroit Lions beat reporter. No, that's cool. A lot of guys are big wrestling fans, and very funny that he's trying to slap on the figure four leg lock. Can you imagine that? When you said that your stepbrother tried to slap you on it, did you get out of it, or did you withstand the pain, or did he ever cause you any unnecessary harm? Because, you know, a lot of kids do that kind of stuff, body slam each other, like headbutt each other, and it's like, hey, now, that's why they always put the disclaimer on all the wrestling shows, do not try this at home. Yet, You just can't help it. Everyone loves to body slam each other.
I don't think it ever hurt me per se. It is painful when he would actually put it on the right way. It was actually painful. I would be able to kind of. You got to realize too. I'm 4 years older than him, and I'm a much bigger guy than he is. So that being said, I was able to withstand the pain. The best was when I would reverse it on him because he would scream like a little girl. So the best thing I think ever, though, we were sitting there wrestling around, and I slipped him into a sleeper, and like I put him to sleep. Like he was down. Like I thought I killed him. So I had to go run and grab my stepmom and be like, hey, I don't know. We were wrestling, and now he's not breathing. I'm not sure what's going on. He came out of it a few minutes later, but it scared the shit out of me.
All right, let's dig into what Justin said and some more talk regarding Calvin Johnson, the addition of Marvin Jones, our reflection on a career that a lot of people will say, yes, was filled with lots of highlights, lots of great memories, but also, too, some unfulfilled potential, unfulfilled talent. Now, Justin said it himself. Again, a lot of people, when you reflect on the Lions, blame the organization when it comes to Calvin Johnson because he performed. That 3-year window when he was so dominant, he did things that no other people saw. And coming out of college, he reached his potential. He was lightning fast. He was a huge target. And when Matthew Stafford came in, they were a great duo. But we just wish they had more success. And at the time, the Lions organization was in flux. They just didn't have all the pieces in place. So when they had the dynamic duo, the offensive line wasn't good enough. You've never really established a supreme running game. And everything in terms of coaching, in terms of the disciplinary tactics that they used, they brought in guys like Fairley and Titus Young and guys that were troubled. And so then you look at what the organization did at the top with Mayhew and Lewan. They just failed to surround Calvin Johnson with the necessary pieces to succeed at the highest level. And I do agree with those that say, you know what, you can't just blame Calvin Johnson. I don't just blame him, but I feel like he had a responsibility to be a little bit more of a leader in that locker room and a leader up top by going, hey, get these guys that are going to help this team win. Maybe he just didn't have the right mindset or the right attitude. He led by example. I agree with that. But in order to have ultimate success and when your team starts to slide and not play well, you need to turn it around. But all credit to Calvin Johnson. He deserves credit for the success that he had. It's just really super challenging when you reflect on it that just 2 playoff games in a 10-year career. It's shameful, man. It's not really cool at all.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, when you draft a guy who's 6'5", 240, and can run a 40-yard dash in 4.35 seconds, I mean, he is a freak show. He is a talent coming out of college. And you're right. When you draft him, you put him on this team, you're expecting great things. And he himself, I'm assuming all professional athletes do expect great things when they enter into the professional ranks. However, it never came to fruition. They finally got him a quarterback with Matt Stafford, and we can debate Matt Stafford's talent and kind of what he can bring to this team. However, they finally give him somebody who can throw the ball downfield and utilize some of his talents a few years into his tenure as a Detroit Lion. I think the biggest issue is, you were touching on it, he always tried to lead by example, and he was just too damn soft-spoken. I feel like if he would have stood up, pounded his chest, hit the podium with his fist a couple times, maybe even threw the podium over and said, hey, we have to get more talent. You have to surround us with more talent. Add some pieces to that defense. Add a few more pieces to this offense. Let's build something. I think they would have got a lot further, and I think he might have actually seen a championship, at least a playoff win. Instead, he leaves with zeros in playoff wins and championships, as well as even divisional titles. And I think that's probably the biggest issue that I have with Calvin.
And so now when you start looking at a player that's retired, you say, okay, what individual accomplishments does he deserve? And a lot of people immediately, once Calvin retired, started to say, okay, is he a Hall of Famer? Where do you slot him in terms of great Detroit Lions players, wide receivers, talent overall? And so to start hitting on that, it's very interesting to debate. I think I fall into the opinion that he is a Hall of Famer because he did change some things. He did set some elite wide receiver records. I just don't think, because of the overall presentation of his career and what the team success, the lack of success that they had, he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Let him have a year or two on the ballot, then boom, you slot him in there. He's a Hall of Famer. He'll have his day wearing the jacket, no doubt about it. Just not first ballot. And I think that's what's been happening lately, is that they're letting the wide receivers in, but first ballot, you got to be like lights out, a lot of rings, a lot of titles, a lot of big time numbers, like 1 or 2 overall in terms of your numbers. And in terms of where he ranks in the world of Detroit sports as on the Lions, great overall receiver, definitely top 3. Can't argue that. You could argue he's 1 or 2 overall, but I do think that because of the lack of playoff success and the lack of, taking this team to where it is, I don't put him as the top. I would say maybe he's number 2 or 3 overall, and maybe a top 15 overall Detroit athlete in town in terms of changing up, the position, being a guy that was supremely talented, being a guy that really had some highlight games and really you could say made a quarterback, made Matthew Stafford. So he's a top 15 guy, no doubt. But where you slot him, it's interesting. I'm interested to get your opinion on where you think Calvin ranks in all these kind of different categories individually. I know you're probably like, oh my God, these guys are talking about me individually. Let's talk to you about the success. But hey, he retired. Let's talk about Calvin, give him a little bit of light. Where do you think he ranks in some of these individual categories?
Well, I think for sure Calvin Johnson is definitely a Hall of Famer. You got to look at his career. Look at what he's done. He revolutionized that position. We've talked about his physical attributes, and nobody at the time was capable of doing what he was doing. I mean, some of his highlight reel material, when he goes up and he catches a ball between 3 defenders, it's unheard of. On top of it, they were installing new defenses every single week trying to contain him. Not even stop him, because you couldn't stop him. You could only hope to contain him. So they were doing different defenses, trying to bracket him, having guys shadow him. It was unbelievable what he did. He revolutionized that position. So that being said, I think right there he goes into the Hall of Fame. I don't think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, because if you look at some of his records, I mean, there are guys that are currently playing that are light years ahead of him. He's ranked 27th on the all-time career wide receivers list. I mean, you've got guys like Reggie Wayne, who just recently retired, Andre Johnson, I'm not sure if he's going to retire this year or not, but Steve Smith, he's coming back for another year. Larry Fitzgerald, he's coming back for another year. Anquan Bolden, he's playing. I mean, and all these guys are ranked light years ahead of him. So that being said, he's not a first ballot, but the guy goes in based purely upon his physical attributes and the way that he was able to help change that position. Unbelievable. As far as the Detroit Lions wide receiver, he's got to be number 1. He has to be. I know Herman Moore did a lot of great things, but I think even Herman Moore would tell you that this guy's way better than me. Physically, you couldn't match up with him. And talent-wise, I mean, he played with some dredges of quarterbacks. I mean, you realize he had Dan Orlovsky, I think, twice. Ugh. He had John Kitna. He had Drew Stanton, who's doing some very good things in Arizona right now, but when he was with the Lions, he was atrocious. So, I mean, he had like a revolving door of quarterbacks. Finally, they got a Matt Stafford. And remember, Matt Stafford couldn't stay healthy his first 2 seasons as a Detroit Lion QB. So it was constantly a new quarterback coming in who would sit there and basically arm punt the ball to him. So Calvin Johnson, number 1 all-time Detroit Lions wide receiver. As far as the Detroit Lions themselves go, I'm going to say he's in the top 3 of Detroit Lions all-time. As far as if you want to do like a Mount Rushmore of Detroit sports, he's in the top 5, I would say. Top 5, top 10.
They quickly, obviously, you can tell that Bob Quinn and the Lions organization was prepared. They had their ducks in a row. They knew, okay, we're likely probably more than 90% sure he's gone. And I don't believe they just reached out to Marvin Jones in the last couple of days and were like, hey, let's bring you aboard. They've had probably some back channel conversations with Marvin Jones's agent. And I do like the fact that he was coveted. He was ranked as one of the 1 or 2 best wide receivers in the class. So Bob Quinn went out there and got it.
On top of that, he's from Cincinnati. Cincinnati was working very diligently to try to keep him, which is always a good sign. That shows that organization likes him. They respect his work ethic. They like what he brings to the table. Also, the New England Patriots were supposed to be in on him as well. And we always talk about how the New England Patriots are basically the gold standard in the NFL for organizations that you want to try to imitate. So the Detroit Lions being able to sit there and slip in and grab Marvin Jones from those 2 organizations, I think bodes very well, especially for what Bob Quinn's trying to do.
The concern is, though, there are some questions. Had an injury-plagued season where he missed, I believe he had an ankle problem where he missed an entire season. He is a guy that when you look at it, he is certified a number 2, and he played with A.J. Green, who is a talented receiver. And so now the question is going to be, how is Golden Tate going to be used in this offense? How is Marvin Jones going to be used? And Justin Rogers said, you got 2 solid number 2s. And I think you can look at it and go, okay, this is a pretty respectable offense. Are you going to see some drop-off with Marvin Jones because he's not playing with A.J. Green? Because now it's going to be easier, I think, for defenses to kind of key in on Golden Tate. They know now it's on film. This is a guy that you got to wrap up and tackle right away because he'll get yards after the catch. So now Marvin Jones is going to have a role in this offense, maybe to be that deep threat, to be a guy that's going to be counted upon to make big plays. Is he going to fill that role? No, he's not going to be Calvin Johnson. But remember, that $8 million is a little bit high for him, but that's what you got to do to bring a guy here. He's not coming to New England. He's coming to Detroit. So there is no selling point with the organization other than Matthew Stafford and the green, baby. And so you show him, hey, you're going to have a quarterback that's probably going to get you the ball, hopefully not get you killed, and we're going to flash you some dollars. That's a recipe to get a guy here. That's what you got to do. But you still need to address the trenches, like everyone says. You're not going to go out and get Treadwell. If they go out and draft Treadwell, I would be floored and shocked. Go out there, get someone on the offensive line, get someone on the defensive line, and really shore up this team and build this team. They went out and made a free agent splash. They're still going to have, like you said, around $33 million in cap space. So they're still going to make a lot of moves. It's going to be interesting to see where they go next and how they target it in the draft. But I'm satisfied with Marvin Jones, but I do have question marks. When you're a pessimistic Lions fan, cuz, you start wondering, in training camp, is he going to go down with an ankle? Is Matthew Stafford going to, maybe just early on in practice throw a ball and, hey, he gets killed? Because we're looking at it like, hey, this is a guy that's going to produce, but this is the Lions. He could go out there and get hurt. He could go out there and underproduce. So I'm fascinated to see. And I'm also fascinated to see, is Golden Tate going to step up his game now that he's probably going to be looked upon as 1A?
Let me put it to you like this. Could you possibly see this team reinventing itself now? Going from a very pass-happy offense to more of a balanced attack. You're losing Calvin Johnson, so you're losing that red zone target, that deep threat that you've always had and that you've leaned on. What you're trying to replace is about 1,300 yards. Last year, Marvin Jones produced 816, being the second fiddle to A.J. Green. He comes to Detroit. If he plays second fiddle, it'll be to Golden Tate, which there's a huge drop-off between A.J. Green and Golden Tate. So I can see his numbers elevating to somewhere near 1,000 yards. I don't think that's unbelievable to ask for from this guy. I think he can do that. So now you're looking to possibly fill maybe 3, 4, 5, 600 yards with a third wide receiver. And that can be spaced out between, you've got guys like Theo Riddick, you've got guys like Amir Abdullah, you got guys like Eric Ebum that you can sit there and you can pass the ball off to. And those guys can help elevate this. I think this team is at a crossroads where it now has to make a decision what it wants to become. Does it want to become this pass-happy offense where all they do is they just chuck the ball around the field? Or do they want to develop a run game, something that can help protect Matt Stafford, help alleviate some of that pressure from him, and help make these wide receivers that you have who aren't automatic Pro Bowlers and automatic Hall of Famers like Calvin Johnson was? You can now sit there, you're able to run the ball. That's going to help. You're going to have to force that defense now to account for that, and that allows them to have more single coverage on the outsides. And with that being done, Matt Stafford's a good enough quarterback where he can throw the ball that these guys can get open and get receptions and move the ball down the field.
Before we get to our Tigers conversation and our look at the mock drafts out there, a good one from NFL.com. I appreciate it. But on the rundown, you put the name of the last guy. So I'm like, did you send it twice? So error on your part, sir. You did. Checking on you.
I'm gonna have to check that out. Oh, I did. Fail.
So Calvin Johnson's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Stafford now is going to be without his favorite toy, his favorite weapon. You concerned at all? My opinion is I'm going to be looking closely to see. Did really, because the overall perception is Calvin made Stafford. Now he's going to have maybe not an overall number one, but he's going to have solid pieces. And this organization has done everything. I mean, literally, they have gone, Calvin retires, they get a wide receiver the next day. This has to be in response to what they believe about Matthew Stafford. I believe they do believe that a certain amount of talent has to be around him. They're not thinking he's Cam Newton where they can just throw out a Ted Ginn Jr. They can just throw out guys that you've never heard of and really have success. So they want to give him a certain level of talent, and the perception is, hey, you give him talent, and he can do some things. I want to see him step up this year. I mean, everyone's giving him another year, giving him more patience. Even Max White, who came on our one-on-one podcast, is like, I'm starting to lean towards thinking it's time for someone new. I'm hoping they draft a quarterback in the later rounds to push him. This is it. This has to be the year where you go and you say, Matthew, you've learned as much as you can. We've kept everything now stable for you. Go out there and do it. I believe he's going to have success. I believe he's going to take this challenge and really look to succeed. But I do believe this offense is going to shift, to answer your question, and it's going to be more conservative. It's going to be more safe, and they're going to look to have more. What you saw the last 8 games, what you're going to see. I like what they're trying to do with them. They're trying to play to his abilities. He's not a gunslinger anymore. He's not a guy that you can trust consistently to throw the ball 60 times. Hey, you want to throw it 60 times within a 5 to 7 yard window? Be my guest. High efficiency. Get a nice running game. Focus on the defense. I think with the shaping of Matthew Stafford, the way they're doing it, I could live with it.
Hopefully that's what happens. Hopefully he takes that next step in his progression.
Shape his ass, damn it.
So as long as this offense isn't heavily reliant on his arm and his shoulder to move the ball down the field, I think we'll be safe. The big issue becomes he now loses his security blanket. When the pocket was collapsing around him, when he needed somebody to go to, he always just threw it up for Calvin. And Calvin was such a freak of nature where he could jump up between 3 guys on the run, make a catch, and then tumble into the end zone. He doesn't have that anymore. So how does his game now evolve and transition over to this new offense? How is this new offense going to sit there and perform on Sundays? That's another big question. What pieces are they going to add to sit there and help Matt Stafford and help this offense move and develop? Because last year, the last 9 games or so, it looked like they kind of figured it out a little bit. You know, it was a very, like you said, high efficient offense. It was able to move the ball down the field. They were able to score points. And Calvin Johnson was a lot of the reason for that. Now what happens? How do they move from here? And that's a big question for Bob Quinn to attack and to handle. And I guess we'll see that with how the draft plays out.
Man, that was fun Lions talk, man. We could just sit and talk Lions all the time, man. I love it. I love this time of year now. We get to hone in on the draft, what's going to be next for this organization, and it's going to be a fun time to look at. And so far, so good for Bob Quinn. Hasn't been a total disaster, but it is debatable. He has given us some things to debate with the moves that he's made. So
let me ask you this real quick before we transition out of this and go into Tigers talk. Do you like what he's doing thus far? I mean, he's come in, he's reshaped the front office, cut a lot of aging veterans, freed up a lot of money in cap space, has handled the Calvin Johnson retirement, I think, as well as you possibly could have. And on day one of free agency, goes out and makes a huge splash.
Yeah, I feel like I thought about this when I was driving up to the studio, and I'm like, they're talking about Bob Quinn, and I'm trying to say this without sounding like a dick, but I don't give him all that much credit because it's easy. You cut Stephen Tulloch, he was slow as hell. You reshape, you blow out the guys in the organization that have been here for 30 years, no doubt about it. You come in and do that. You get arguably the number 1 receiver in free agency. I mean, it wasn't that hard if you read the tea leaves, what he was doing. So far.
But he executed. And that's something
I don't think it was that hard to do it.
You're right, though. But that's something that we haven't been able to say about most Detroit general managers.
But that's because they were less than competent. Remember, Bob Quinn, I believe. Now,
does he get brownie points for actually having a brain and being able to pull the trigger?
No, he gets brownie points when he adds a player maybe in the 3rd or 5th round, 3rd to 6th round that comes in and surprises me, and I go, who was this guy?
So you're giving him an INC right now.
I'm giving him a big fat incomplete, and I'm going, you know what? Anybody else with a reasonable mind would have made these moves. You cut Tulloch. You move on from these pieces. I mean, literally, besides the core group, you could reshape anybody. And going out and getting the number 1 guy, I don't think is challenging when you flash him $8 million. So that's something now. If Marvin Jones becomes in his contract a Calvin Johnson, if he's a guy that you maybe underpaid, then I'd be shocked because he is talented. He's coming into his prime. If he overachieves, I'd love that. But I want to see what he does in the draft. And my evaluation of him starts when the NFL draft ticks, when it comes to number 16. What do the Lions do? And when that picture is painted, what did we get here? And are they on the field in August? So I give him an incomplete, and I don't give him credit for what he's done because he's made really basic, easy moves that you and I would have made. I would have went in there and torched the place. I would have been like, okay, the Lions organization front office consists of Bob Quinn and nobody else. And here we go. And I think he would have got credit for it. You had to blow this out. Unbelievable. I don't give him any credit yet. I want to see what he does with the draft, and I want to see success. I want to see talented football players, and I want to see wins. So he doesn't get credit from me just yet. All right, let's take a quick break, come back, reset, talk a little bit Tiger spring training. The weather's nice. It's turned. Perfect time to talk Tiger spring training. A little bit of news and notes we got to cover, and definitely we'll end the podcast talking about the NFL.com mock draft that you've presented. Stay with us, Doc and Jock, longest running, weekly, episodic Detroit sports podcast. Fact, no doubt about it. Every single Thursday, Vinny, this podcast has come out on DetroitSportsPodcast.com since September 2013. 135 weeks strong, loving it, rolling along, having great guests. I just absolutely love this hour and a half every week. DetroitSportsPodcast.com. We'll be right back. I want to tell everyone out there about DetroitSportsNation.com. They're a great website, and they've been very supportive to all the shows on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. They host all the podcasts. They have great writers that cover all the Detroit teams, all the college teams. Check out their website and support those who support us. DetroitSportsNation.com. The collaboration has been excellent, and it's helped us to continue to grow and have great guests take phone calls. So our collaboration with the Detroit Sports Nation has really been successful, and support those who support us. DetroitSportsNation.com. Moving right along on my favorite time of the week on our podcast. Quickly, before we start talking about the Tigers, I want to give credit to Vinny Stubbs. Called me up out of the blue on AM 1160 out of Fenton, and he's like, hey, Doc, call me up and tell me what you think about Calvin Johnson. And I'm like, okay, so I'm listening in, and dang, Vinny sounded really good on the radio. He was succinct, he was fast-paced, high energy, and I was telling you before we started, I was like, man, Vinny, why doesn't you show that on the podcast, Vinny? I know you listen every week. On Thursdays, I want you to show that on the podcast as well. He did really great, and I was really like, thinking, racking my brain in the car. I'm like, wow, okay, maybe I've undersold him. Maybe he comes in later in the evenings, and maybe he's a little bit tired from his long day working. But I was proud of him for what he did on the air. He sounded great, and he gave me probably 6 minutes of time talking about Calvin Johnson, and he invited me, so that was cool. And I appreciate any time someone thinks of me, and thank you, V. Steezy. It goes a long way. It made me feel good. You did pay it forward, and that's what it's all about. And keep it up. That work you did, if you do it on the air, I'll take credit for it. So thank you very much. I'll say that this was the minor leagues, like the NXT of Vinny Stubbs' career. I'll take it.
God.
And so when he gets called up to the big leagues, I'll take a little credit and be like,
even when you pay a compliment, you're still backhanding him.
It's not backhanded. I'm saying that if he uses what he learns here on the podcast, makes the mistakes, and he takes it on the air and goes like that, I'll take a little credit and say, hey, now that's a good accomplishment. And I give credit where credit's due. He did a good job, and I know I give him a lot of grief, and I will balance it out and say he did a really good job. I was impressed by what I heard.
All right, let's talk about Tigers.
All right, what are you seeing about these Detroit Tigers? I know we want to talk a little about the pitching staff and things like that, but just want to quickly assess your interest level right now. I know you're a big hockey guy. College basketball is right around the corner. We're digging into the Lions and stuff like that. How much are you peeking into these Detroit Tigers?
I will say I'm staying abreast of what's going on, but I'm not tuning into anything on the radio. I've not sat there. I have checked to see if they've been on Fox Sports Detroit. I have checked to see if the games are being televised. When I'm looking for the games, they're not on. So that being said, I'm just kind of sitting there trying to read the news and notes that come out because, honestly, it's spring training. You can't take too much of what's going on into account. I mean, guys are going to go out there and they're going to get shelled and give up 5 runs in 2 innings off of 40 pitches. It's going to happen. They're working on stuff, and I say stuff with finger quotes. It's one of those things I'm watching to see certain developmental things. There's a lot of good stuff coming out about Bruce Rondon, and we're going to talk about that. There's some questionable things happening with Anibal Sanchez. We're going to talk about that. Nick Castellanos seems to have improved himself a little bit. There are some things going on with this starting rotation that has me concerned, as well as in this bullpen that I'm a little bit nervous about as well. And my whole thing is when I'm watching the Tigers, I'm really just trying to make sure everybody comes into opening day healthy. I want to see them develop. If you're a pitcher, I want to see you develop a new pitch. I want to see you being able to master something, work on something. If you're playing in the field, I want to see you maybe elevate your defensive prowess. If you struggled at the plate last year, I'd like you to get a little bit better, maybe read pitches a little bit more. So there's just minor things that I'm kind of trying to stay abreast about and watch. That all being said, Anibal Sanchez has struggled to remain healthy through most of his career as a Detroit Tiger. It's a big issue. He makes a lot of money. I think $17 million a year. This season, he had some tricep tendonitis going into spring training. He's been throwing some long toss. He's now working out of the bullpen. If everything goes accordingly, he should be throwing some batting practice.
Yeah, and some good news. Just reading on DetroitNews.com, he did throw a long bullpen session, and he's reporting minimal pain. So that's good news for Anibal Sanchez. Wilson again as well. No structural damage to his shoulder following a recent MRI. So all your points are very valid. But the question you got to ask is your confidence level with Anibal Sanchez, because this is a guy that's injury prone. This is a guy that's going to have the number 3 job. Is no easy cakewalk. This is a guy that we're counting upon that, hey, maybe Jordan Zimmerman, Verlander have a couple rough stretches because they're going to be going up against supreme starting talent. You're going to be counting upon this guy to stop streaks potentially, to go longer in games, and me and Vito were talking about this on the baseball podcast. Last year, Anibal Sanchez got rocked. He was giving up home runs like it was something easy to do, and that's something that's a little bit concerning because if his miles per hour dips, if he doesn't have command, if he starts off the season slow, can't afford that. This guy needs to step it up, and he's going to be in charge of doing a lot of things for the Tigers, and I don't know, my confidence level is a little bit waning. I'm happy that there's no real issues going on with his arm. He's starting to come back, but counting on this guy to do a lot more than he's been doing for sure.
More to your point, the way this pitching rotation is set up, it's set up to have 3 studs at the top, and Anibal Sanchez is your 3rd stud. So after Anibal, it kind of becomes a little bit dicey because I like Daniel Norris, but you have to realize Daniel Norris is going to be in his first full season as a starting pitcher. And then after that, you've got the corpse of Mike Pelfrey. And God forbid you stick gas cans around that and watch that go kaboom. So after Anibal, it kind of becomes a roll of the dice. Anibal has to be healthy going into this season. He has to remain healthy throughout the season. Otherwise, you've got a guy like maybe Shane Green, and then you're stretching because this starting rotation goes to Shane Green and then maybe Matt Boyd. And Matt Boyd right now is looking like a 4A player. He's a little bit better than what you got going on in the AAA, but he's not quite minor or major league ready. So you lose Anibal. Mike Pelfrey's not going to give you anything. I'm calling it now. That's a horrible pickup. I hate that signing. I'm calling it. So you move Daniel Norris up to your 3rd. You've got nothing for a 4th and a 5th pitcher. You're basically calling me and you in. And hey, good luck with that. I've got 2 bad shoulders, and I don't know if you've ever thrown a baseball.
Well, I don't think I'd want to try at this point in time. I think I'm a little bit out of shape. I get cut. I'm actually in the Pablo Sandoval range of fitness, but you know what? Maybe I could take a couple swings and I'll DH.
Oh no, Pablo Sandoval.
You know what? And maybe one of these breaks I will juxtapose me versus Pablo Sandoval. Maybe we'll see some differences. I think a little bit of Photoshop, I could probably look like Pablo Sandoval.
Oh no.
But how concerned were you with the news of Cameron Maybin? Dude, of course, a guy we're counting on as a new addition to the squad. And boom, gets plunked on the wrist. He's out 4 to 6 weeks. He's going to have another test to check, another x-ray to check on the healing process. Big setback, minor. I mean, this is a guy we're counting on because Ghost has a lot of question marks, and Cameron Maybin was considered to be a guy that maybe you could throw in there and be an improvement, but plunked in the wrist early on spring training, out 4 to 6 weeks. A little bit nervous. Hopefully he come back within a week or 2 of the season starting, but you can never be too careful with the wrist, especially because that's how you bat efficiently, bat speed, all that generated from your wrist. And just a tough thing to see so early on.
I think the big issue with the Cameron Maybin injury is that it's going to slow him down when he gets up for his at-bats. I think in the field, he'll be okay. I don't see too much of an issue there. But when he comes up to his at-bats, again, you're going to miss all of spring training, basically. So you don't have that timing. You don't have that rhythm. You don't have that feel. Now you're sitting there, you're going into games where things are really on the line here, and you don't have any of that. You've not done it for a couple, almost a month and a half now. I think that's where that issue becomes kind of dicey, and you're looking at possibly having some issues there. Speaking
of issues, the Tigers are going to be counting upon the lower tier guys, the guys lower in the batting order, 6 through 9, to really contribute because when you looked at the entire batting order, this is a boom or bust kind of offense, an offense that strikes out a lot. And if you peek in, look at Justin Upton's spring training stats. Lots of Ks early on, hasn't hit just yet. A lot of people are going, when are we going to see the hitting side of Justin Upton? We're seeing the K side. That's the side we know. We know that this team is a boom or bust situation, but I know it's early in spring training, but mark that a little bit as a half-size bullet point concern for me. But issues, Nick Castellanos, Jose Iglesias, guys like that at the lower half of the batting order, James McCann, are going to have to step up. And 2 of the guys that you're going to be counting upon are McCann and Nick Castellanos. I read a recent scouting report that said that, his defense went from awful to we can live with it. Not too bad, but that doesn't give me any confidence that
that doesn't make you feel better?
No, it doesn't.
Oh, it makes me feel 10 times better.
Nick Castellanos is a guy, again, that we're still waiting on. A la Matthew Stafford, got talent, showed signs of really strong talent, can hit the ball out of the park. Nice power, but consistently, defensively was brutal, and there were so many plays that he really missed on last year, and he is offensively inconsistent. And so, Nick Castellanos has stepped up this year.
That's the thing with Nicky C, though. The reason why the Tigers never traded him away, because you have to remember, a few years ago, he was the hot prospect that everybody wanted. You go to trade deadline, everybody wanted Nicky C. They like his bat. They like what he can do with his bat. And by all accounts, his bat is remained strong. It looks like it's going to be okay this year. It looks like his big issue is just judging which pitches to swing at. And it looks like he's corrected that a little bit. So that bodes well. Now, his defense, you're right, been atrocious. Guy looks like he has cinder blocks around his feet. All right? Can't move on the ball, can't read the ball, can't catch the ball, field it, can't do anything with it. Disaster. Him moving from being a human dumpster fire to being, okay, not such a big deal, looks like a baby bonfire, we can roll with that. I'm okay with that. I can deal with it because if you give me a whole year with Jose Iglesias playing next to him, I think Jose Iglesias makes him look that much better. All right? On top of it, if he can now field the ball, get it over to first base, possibly turn two, I'm okay with it. I can live with it as long as his bat comes around and he's hitting somewhere around 275. I'm good. I can handle that. I think every Tigers fan can handle that as well. The big issue with Nicky C is he just has to be able to perform at the plate. If he can perform at the plate, it alleviates a lot of pressure on that defensive side of the ball. Plus, you pair him with Jose Iglesias, who's got a lot more range than most shortstops do. It's gonna help offset some of that and juxtapose any issues that you might have with Nick Castellanos.
On the pitching side of things, the biggest question mark, arguably, that we're going to look at is Bruce Rondon.
The Rondoner.
Who do you think, real quickly, rating him is a bigger question mark, Castellanos or Rondon?
Going into this year, definitely Rondon.
Big question mark, yeah. When you get kicked off the team, it's a big problem.
Rondon got sent home early last season because he didn't have a good attitude. He wasn't putting the effort for it. That's what they said. So looking at my tea leaves here on the desk, everything points to Rondon coming in with a brand new motivation.
Lease on life.
Yeah, he looks like he's actually taken a lot of things to heart. I think he is super, super important to this Tigers bullpen. And let me tell you why. You said it yourself. Alex Wilson, he's having some rotator cuff issues. He's got some soreness. He's not pitching. You're counting on him in your bullpen. If K-Rod slips and falls back a little bit and is not the same K-Rod that he was last year, you're in trouble. Bruce Rondon's come in. He looks like he has much better command of his pitches. He can locate them. Also, he's developed a slider, and he's working on a changeup. That guy's got 3 pitches in his arsenal right now. That's unheard of for a guy at your back end of your bullpen to have 3 pitches that he can rely on. So I think right now, Bruce Rondon, incredibly important to this Tigers bullpen and moving forward. I don't know if he's going to make the opening day roster. A lot's going to depend on Alex Wilson and his health. But I can see him being called up in the middle of the season and really paying dividends. Yeah,
I'm hoping that this guy can be a nice addition to this bullpen because, you know, this team is poised to score a lot of runs. And so if if this offense can give the guys in the bullpen a little bit of relief, maybe a 2-3 run cushion every time they come in, than being tied or trailing or down or only up a run, then I think that they'll be more comfortable. I really feel like this bullpen could be a strong front-running bullpen. I can't wait to see how they look when the pressure's on and they're only up by 1 run or tied, and see how they do, because that's going to be the pressure zone. Bruce Rondon features that nice fastball, still snap. You know, you can't teach 99 miles per hour on the gun consistently.
Dude, he hit 100, 101, and 101 the other day.
After surgery, that is supreme talent. After surgery, you know, nowadays you say sometimes you come back better than ever. And if his arm holds up, if his attitude holds strong, hey, setup guy and another guy that maybe we can utilize. I'm confident. I'm satisfied with what I'm seeing so far. The news looks good with the Tigers. Like I said, I like the fact that they're coming into the start of the season looked upon as being underdogs, looked upon as being a team that's going to finish last in the Central. But overall, you know, I'm pretty satisfied with where they're at. They could do a lot better in a lot of different areas. But going into it, I'm pretty satisfied. I think that Brad Ausmus has to show improvement with 10%, 15% better coaching, using numbers in a more advantageous fashion, better base running, and being able to manage this team correctly. This team has the talent needed. And are they going to show it? That's going to be the question mark. And what are they going to do with some of the key injuries and some of the little setbacks that we've seen in the start of spring training? So good stuff. I'm peeking in a little bit too, probably the same amount. And some of the games are on AM 1270. They are still not starting on TV a whole lot. A little bit on Major League Baseball, stuff like that. But it's spring training. It's still early.
Something interesting to watch too with the Tigers this year is they're going to be flip-flopping.
Dan Dickerson and
Mario Impemba and Dan Dickerson will be
doing
playing
some
off each other there. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. And I think it'll be fun. when I read that, I was like, oh, that's different. That's cool. So that'll be interesting. You
Okay.
ready to get into this mock draft?
Now, cuz I find it interesting that you find these
Just
mock
wait,
drafts.
just wait. This is great. This is a 4-rounder.
Yeah, it is a good one.
4-rounder.
It's a good guy.
All right,
Chad
4-round.
Reuter,
Chad Reuters.
NFL.com.
Yes, the 4-rounder. All right, I'm going to give you the first one. I'm going to watch your head explode, okay? I'm going to give you the first round pick. I'm going to watch your head explode. But then we're going to piece your head back together, and we're going to fill it up with some Elmer's glue, all right? Because I think what he's got going on here, now all this is going to change because of what happened during free agency. But you're going to go kaboom, and then we're going to piece you back together, and I think you will be thoroughly impressed if the Lions were to do this. So with their first pick,
At 16.
the Detroit Lions draft Laquan Treadwell, wide receiver, Ole Miss.
No!
Right. Everybody hates it, right? I was like, what the hell is this guy doing? This guy's an idiot. He has no idea what he's talking about. But wait, he comes back in the second round, and with the 46th pick, a guy who me and you have talked about as being a first-round talent. Somehow this guy falls all the way into the second round. A'Shawn Robinson, defensive tackle out of Alabama. So if they go Laquan Treadwell first round, all right, so offense, and then they come back and they grab a first-round talent for defensive tackle in A'Shawn Robinson, does that make you feel a little bit better?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm totally okay with it, but I do think that by seeing the addition of Marvin Jones, now you're not going to go that high with a wide receiver. That's not happening.
Well, just we're in a vacuum in time, okay?
It didn't happen yet, okay?
It didn't happen yet. We're in a vacuum in time. We go third round now, all right? This is their compensatory pick for losing Ndamukong Suh because they don't have a third round pick. So 96th overall, they come back and they draft Will Redmond, cornerback out of Mississippi State. How's that make you feel? A little bit better?
Yeah, of course. I like his strategy after the first round. I was pretty satisfied all the way through. He's very thorough, very in touch with what a lot of people have in their mock drafts. But that first round pick is important because that's the key addition you're going to have.
He's got to be a starter instantly. Your first round pick has to be a starter. He has to make an impact. All right, but we come back now in the fourth round. We're looking at 112th overall. Your Detroit Lions take Jordan Jenkins, defensive end, Georgia. How's that make you feel?
Perfect. I'm like, yes. Defense. That's what I'm looking. That's what I'm hoping that the Lions are targeting is strong, impactful guys. They're going to come in on the defensive front and make some impact. So, yes, after that first round pick, once I saw it, I'm like, of course, that's what, I don't understand why they would have Laquan Treadwell dropping to 16. The majority of mock drafts have Treadwell going way higher than 16. So he's not going to drop. So if the Lions want him, they're going to have to go up and get him. So I highly doubt. I think that the percentage chance of Treadwell being a Detroit Lion is going to be 10%.
All right, let me put it to you like this. If the Lions were to do something like this, go out, draft, wide receiver, draft, running back, draft, any type of skill, talent position with that 16th pick, that first night, I will probably burn my house down. Okay, I will set it on fire because I'll be so pissed off. But if they come back on that second day and that third day and they go defense, and they're getting they're getting first round talent in that second round and possibly even into that third round, I'm going to have to sit there and try to put my house back together. Because if this draft was to actually unfold, I would be pissed. I'd be furious that they took Laquan Treadwell. I'd be furious. But the fact that you got A'Shawn Robinson and then you come back and you get a cornerback and you get a defensive tackle or you get a defensive end, I would absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. And it's all SEC talent, so you know it's good, right? SEC's not putting out any busts unless your name's Trent Richardson. That's the only bust they're putting out. So honestly, I would be thrilled with a draft like this. I would hate that first round pick. I would absolutely hate it. Like I said, I'd burn my house down. It'd be atrocious. I'd have to go to the jail. Just put me in jail. Seriously. I'd be a mess. Be awful. Be furious. I'd be on Twitter and I'd be screaming and I'd be calling the Lions all kinds of fun names.
Okay, how would you gauge if they went offensive tackle? There's two out there that are pretty highly ranked and are being talked about. In this mock draft, he has Taylor Decker, offensive tackle from Ohio State, going 18 to the Colts, which is a natural fit because Andrew Luck, my goodness, if he plays behind a line like that, is never going to make it through an entire season. Or if something were to happen, this scenario is much less likely, but he has Jack Conklin going 13, and he's raised his stock. So Conklin's in between that 13 to 20 kind of range, so he could fall in there. If they go Jake Conklin, or If they go Jake Conklin or Taylor Decker, you okay with that?
I'm better with Conklin than I am with Decker. I don't have a problem if they go offensive tackle. As long as they follow the rest of the draft up addressing defensive needs, I'm okay with it. The thing is, I really want them to go out during free agency, add something to that offensive line. That way you can come back and you can just go hard on that defense. Because that defense, I feel, is much closer to being special and doing something really good and productive than that offense is. All right, I know you have to protect Stafford. I know you need to develop a run game. So if you go out and you're able to get some type of an offensive tackle in free agency, you can come back, go defense, and then try to fill in something on that offensive line later. I think that helps out a little bit. I would be okay with Conklin because I think he can play left tackle. He plays left tackle. You slide Riley Reef over to right. I think Taylor Decker is probably going to be a right tackle in the league. I don't see him being a left tackle. So now you're stuck with a turnstile still at left tackle, and you've got Decker as your right tackle. It's not going to work for me.
Now, I love talking about the NFL draft. So now, how in tune? You've been peeking into the names. You've been highly evaluating kind of what needs certain teams have, and you've been looking at probably a good set of mock drafts, right?
Yeah.
Can I put a challenge out to you then?
Are you going to have me create my own mock draft?
Jock's mock draft has to be created, man. I do believe, in the era of, engagement and getting people to look at our website and to have discussions. I would love to break down Jock's mock draft 1.0, 2.0, maybe get up to 3. Do 3 mock drafts.
You know how much I'm a very busy man.
But I'm putting the challenge out to you.
Sleep comes at a premium for me.
It does, but I'm pretty certain you have like at least 6 handy. You could at least slot the first one together.
Yeah, but I gotta write reasons why these guys are going where they're going.
A sentence.
A sentence.
Here's what we know. I learned. Max taught me a couple things to.
I have to analyze and sit there and project.
Yes.
And you want 3 mock drafts.
I'm challenging you. Now, hey, it could be. I'm calling you out. I need to see Jock's mock draft. You got to do work. You got to put it out there. You got, let's say, 2 weeks. Okay.
Jesus.
It doesn't. You can only do Jock's final mock draft. You could say Jock's A+ must see mock draft. So we'll see. I put the challenge out there. Whether it's taken or not, we'll see. It's not like I said. I'm not demanding you do it, but I'd love to read it and analyze it, and then maybe have someone else critique it. You never know. It'd be fun.
It would be fun. We'll see.
All right, my friend.
I gotta find the time there.
Okay.
See what we can do.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
And lots to get to. I mean, this podcast was fun. Lots to talk about. College basketball is going to take over the next couple of days. We're going to have a lot of talk about Michigan State, a lot of talk about Michigan. It's that tournament time. So next week's podcast, it's going to be fun breaking down what the heck's going on, where Michigan State's slated in our NCAA bracket. Will be fun, too. It's bracket time, baby. Should we do a DSP bracket with just all the guys on the podcast platform?
Yeah, we can
just
do that.
6 of them, little contest, maybe winner, most points gets something or other.
Yeah, we can
have
do
a little
that.
contest, have a little fun, cause some debates, and have some good fun with it.
Yeah, we can do that. That'd be fun.
All right, sounds
That'd be
good.
easy.
Easy to do, right?
Yeah, that wouldn't be like me putting a freaking mock draft together.
What? You should be actually wanting to put a mock draft out there. It's good for you.
I enjoy putting mock draft. I've done it before, and I enjoy it.
Well, see, look,
it's finding the time to do it all.
Well,
and to make it good, because I can't just, like you said, just write a sentence. I'd be like, hey, this guy's big and he's a good pass rusher. He's going here. No, that doesn't work.
Somehow fair and balanced has to always come up in my mind. And you were quick to each of the last 2 years go, I want to revisit the draft and redraft it my way. So you were quick to come back and go, I don't like what you did. Now kind of put it beforehand. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
You're very quick to put out a couple of Jocks revisiting mock drafts, but let's do it
Because I
beforehand.
hate the way they draft. There's talent sitting there staring at you, and these guys are like, hey, let's go get another offensive shiny piece. Let's add that.
Yeah, and your opinion's valid as anybody else's. I mean, I know you're in tune and you're looking at things just the way everybody else is. I mean, that's why I was giggling when you were talking Tigers a little bit. Literally 6 minutes after I said, is Marvin Jones going to get hurt and stay on the field? Prominent figure over at The Free followed us and tweeted, I can't wait for Marvin Jones to go for 4 catches and 75 yards before missing the next 12 games with injury. We are in tune.
Yep,
we know what people are thinking, and we all think the same things, man. We're all looking at the Lions going, hey, now, a little bit of skepticism. So our opinions aren't that far off, and your mock draft is just as valid as anybody else's, so I want to see it.
All right, we'll see what we can do for you.
All right. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John McAroon. Thank you for clicking that download button. It means a lot to us. We love doing it, and it's a strong motivation for us to keep the mics hot, the office lights on, and to keep this project rolling along. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you to Justin Rogers. Great guest. Thank you very much.
Go Wings. Hopefully you figure it out. Fucking tickle in my throat. I hate it.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I have voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me. They talk to me. They tell me things that I will do. They show me things I